Hello, hello, hello everybody, and welcome back to LRC for round number 6 of Season 7 here under the lights at Lusail in Qatar. My name is Coolest, and I will once again, unfortunately, be your only commentator for today, but that will not discourage us from the on-track action, which is, as usual and as we have seen many times this season, presumably going to be just as entertaining as ever. We've had some great races here at Qatar in the past, and I can only assume that that is going to continue today. So we'll have a look and see how things go. I'll just turn up the game sound a little bit real quick. Hopefully that should give us a better balance. If there's any issues with the stream, then do let me know, but as you can already see, plenty of cars making their way out onto the track already. First one around is going to be, well, the first two around is actually going to be the two Haas cars, but it's going to be Q-Man, who's already about to make it to the final corner to get us underway with qualifying here today. So it is going to be, well, okay, never mind, he's going to go back into the pits, but it is going to be just your usual format of session here today. Nothing out of the ordinary, no sprint race or anything. Okay, Q-Man is retiring from the session. That would be to serve as qualifying ban. That is a good point. I need to check, there is one other driver who does have a quali ban, so let me quickly remind myself of who that is. I probably should have done this beforehand, but let me see. That would be Slinks, also has a qualifying ban, so there we go. Those two both will not be setting times in this session. Likewise, an even more serious ban would be for the second McLaren driver. That's not Lewin. He's replacing the second McLaren driver, which was Kateshi, who was a full-time driver. He's now received a season ban after last week's race in Austria for a major, or a moderate collision, according to the stewards, with Blundy. So yeah, we will unfortunately not be seeing the German driver again for the remainder of this season, which is never what you like to see, but rules are rules, and they do have to be enforced. So let's see if Blazer is, thankfully, yes, he is going to be on a competitive lap here. So we'll ride on board with the American for our first proper time of the session as he makes his way into turn 12 here. Naturally, he's the quickest driver in the middle sector, being the first one to go through the sector, and is going to keep it nice and easily flat to the floor through here. What about 15? Flat round there as well, but he's going to lose the back end. Big save from the American coming in straight away there. That is not ideal for your banker time. Obviously, he'll have plenty of more chances as now he's going to run off the track. Somehow the game decides that it's still a valid lap, so across the line it's going to be a 122.333 for Blazer. Don't know if that'll be a good omen for him or not, but yeah, there was a little bit of a scruffy end to what was otherwise potentially a good lap, and I Like Trains is going to immediately blow that one out of the water with a 121.8, so continuing his good form, he's once again reserving for Sauber in place of Afari. So we'll see what he can do after last week. And Tamer now goes up to the top of the standings with a 121.1. So that is, yeah, I think we're going to be seeing the Red Bull driver here. Obviously, now full-time driver as of last week. So I think we can expect to see him building back up to his best form, to his peak performance that we saw him at last season, and that is certainly, that lap time, a sign that he is doing exactly so. And you can see there's a lot of cars coming across the line at the moment. One of them was Mr. Burst, who, with a little bit of help from Phil in the form of a tow, gets himself up to third place, but he has also been beaten by Shadow, who sets a 121.4 to go second. So yeah, a lot of people flooding across the line there. And we also have our points championship leader. We do finally have the up-to-date championship standings. Elias, obviously, clear at the front of the field. I think that was the one position that everybody could have worked out. And he is getting his first lap of the session underway here as well. Making his way through turn 3, you could see he was maximising all of the track around the first two corners, and that is exactly what you'd expect from a driver of his calibre. Some of the margins that he's taken pole by this season are genuinely eye-watering, so we'll see if he's able to do the same thing here, but I would expect Tam is going to give him a pretty good run for his money. I've seen some great fights between those guys, both in LRC and in other leagues here in the past, so hopefully we get to see another one of those today, but yeah, we'll wait and see as he makes his way through the middle sector now into turn 10. It can be easy to get some understeer there, but everything looked nice and tidy for the Ferrari driver. He makes his way now through the fake corner of turn 11. It's really just a curve to the left, and then, well, I was going to say throws it into turn 12, 13 and 14, but he really doesn't have to throw anything in because the car is so gripped up. He's yeah, just going to glide through that. A little downshift, but keeps the throttle pinned to the floor through 15. And now touch of the brakes into turn 16. It's quicker than it looks, but it's a bit deceptive on the exit. The track is narrower than it would otherwise be, so up to the line, Elias sets provisional pole and brings the order right back to where it belongs. But he is only 3/10 clear of Tamer, which is by far one of the smaller margins that we've seen him take provisional pole by so far this season, so there is yet still hope. And in the meantime, his teammate is now also going to be starting, well, I thought he was going to be starting at first lap of the session, but doesn't seem to be going particularly quickly there, so I don't know, perhaps he'd invalidated another attempt, but let's see, as he comes up to the end of the first sector. Well, sorry, the first sector ends after turn 5, not before. Let's see, now as he comes up to the end of the first sector, yeah, three seconds off his best pace, so he's not going to be improving, must have just finished a lap. And speaking of just finishing a lap, there goes Unitas across the line. He's going to get himself up into P8. So, yeah, we are also expecting... okay, Kiesiel has made it to the session, so that's good to see. I was going to give a mention to him. He wasn't here in the lobby, but he is here now. That's very nice. And AJ may or may not be joining us partway through the session as well. We'll wait and see, but haven't heard anything from him, so it may just be the one Red Bull of Tamer competing for those guys here today. But yeah. First times are pretty much in now. Don't think anyone's going to be improving in the immediate future, and that is going to leave us with Elias, Tamer and Binmeister in the top 3, Blundy running very well so far in P4, and Mr. Bust showing some good consistency again up in P5, Trains in 6th, perhaps again on some good pace in 7th, as we've sort of started to become accustomed to this season. A real big step up from the Finnish driver from his previous performances on F123, and then Unitas running well in 8th. Blazer will be perhaps a little bit disappointed to only be down in P9, and Phil likewise in P10. Same for Nade as well. It's obviously a very, very competitive grid that we have here, so let's see how much things can change towards the end of the race. But yeah, I think we are going to have plenty more times yet to come in qualifying, albeit obviously none for Slinks, but Tim Blaish, we'll wait and see what he can do. He's back with us again after, you may remember his antics from last week. Suppose he was sort of showing Hashim how it's done when it comes to actually getting out of the way when the blue flags came, but there were quite a lot of blue flags and he did end up even getting disqualified with 64 seconds of penalties. So hopefully for his sake that's not going to be the case again here today, but yeah, we'll see how he fares. I wouldn't expect anything spectacular from him. And he may actually be fighting this guy right here, which is, of course, Leland. He's going to come back into the pits now. Currently the slowest driver to have set a time, but he's only a 10th or so off one of our new drivers here today. In fact, I believe, yes, our only new driver here today, which is Ugly Panda in the Williams, who is, as it stands, a full-time Williams driver. So we welcome him into the series, and we eagerly await what he can do, but I think he will be expecting perhaps to improve a bit more on his current time. So yeah, let's see who's up next. It seems like Tamer might just be starting a lap. Gets a bit of a lock up into the first corner there, so it's not the ideal way to start a lap, but seems to be attacking the corners nonetheless. And again, there's just a little bit of a hint of oversteer and a little bit of sliding going through the second corner, so just not quite as planted as the Ferrari of Elias. Gets a nice heap of curb going through turns 4 and 5 there, which leaves him a 10th up on his best time, so he's definitely on a competitive lap here, is the Red Bull driver. He makes his way now into turn 7, a nice late apex corner this one, and can catch you out on the exit curb there. It's easy to invalidate track limits on quite a lot of the corners here, but Tamer is navigating it quite well so far. Gets the front left tyre hooked over the curb to give him a good turn in round 10, and is going to be smooth on the power all the way up to turn 12 here. He's now 2 tenths up in his time, and purple in the second sector no less, so if he can find another 10th in the final sector, he could well displace Elias's provisional pole time. Heading into turn 15 now, see if he downshifts. No, he's going to keep it in 7th, so you can see a little bit of difference between the two drivers. Puts it into overtake mode for a second, as he heads into the final corner now, going to run it right up to the curb on the exit, and up to the white line. DRS is open, and to the checkered flag he goes. Well, he does improve, but he lost a bit of time in the final sector, so he's going to close up to Elias, but not close enough to take away pole position, and Binmeister as well, also closing up quite massively there, and almost was able to beat Tamer himself. So yeah, things are starting to get competitive here, and that is a much more competitive time for the now 4th place driver of Blazer. As I Like Trains is going to cross the line now to go into P4. Another good lap from him. So yeah, things are looking a lot more competitive up at the front of the field. From what I understand, from the little bit I heard from the Ferrari team strategist Aero before the race, he's not expecting this to be the strongest of tracks for Elias. Now, obviously, you've got to take that with a grain of salt, because Brazil wasn't supposed to be one of his strongest tracks, and he won that one by a country mile. So we'll see how it goes here, but so far so good in terms of having some competition in this race, and with the inevitable DRS train that will form, it is not looking too bad so far. But hello, what is this? A little bit of Ferrari coordination here. Where have I seen that before in Qatar? Perhaps is going to give Elias a beautiful little toe down into the first corner, so we'll see if he's able to capitalise on that. Was able to make the apex nicely, but he's a little bit wider through turn 2, so we'll see what Elias is able to do here, but that toe is definitely going to help him down the start-finish straight, could help him massively with how high the wings are around this track. And now he's taking a hell of a lot more curb around the first sector than he was doing on his first lap, and that is going to leave him purple 3/10 to the good. So yeah, that shows you what the toe has done, and he's looking to clear any doubt that he won't be taking pole position here today. He's obviously very quick over one lap, but he's right on the white line there. That must have been pixels away, centimetres away from getting his lap invalidated, but he keeps it on the track most importantly, so he's still going as he heads now around the curve of turn 11. The McLaren is going to stay well clear as he gets into turn 12 now. Flat out to the end of the lap. He's actually lost a little bit of time in the middle sector though. The improvement was down to 2/10 only, so we'll see. Through turn 15 now, again, going to downshift, max out the revs, and then back up into 7th as he heads into the final corner. See what he's able to do. Can he keep it on the track first and foremost? Yes, he can. So up to the line, DRS open. Can Elias improve? You bet he can, but it's only to a 1:20.5, so obviously it's still a very good time, but 0.5 of a second, maybe, just maybe, somebody can catch it. It's going to take a seriously strong lap, and the toe down the start-finish straight will have really helped him there, but yeah. Good lap from Elias, and we'll see what everybody else is able to do. That is the gauntlet laid down, and we'll see if anyone can stand a chance of responding to that. Meanwhile, his teammate, after giving him that toe, is now going to go for a lap of his own here. As he makes his way through the first sector and into turn 4, see how much curb he takes, and really doesn't take any curb, so that's not going to be the ideal way through for him. The more curb you can take around those corners, the better, obviously. It's a bit of risk versus reward, because if you take too much curb, then you will get your lap invalidated, so we'll see how perhaps he's able to do here. I'm also seeing on the minimap, he's closing back up to his teammate here, so maybe, just maybe, Elias is going to try and repay the favour somewhere around the lap, maybe down the start-finish straight, but perhaps a bit deep there, going into turn 10, so we'll see what the sector split is looking like for the Finnish driver. He heads up to the beam now, and he is just about up on his time, so, you know, maybe, just maybe, a little bit of a toe from his teammate would help him around this final sector, and that's exactly what he's going to get. You can see him slowly but surely gaining up to the back of his number 7 Ferrari. He's going to get the toe up to the final corner, going to get some dirty air around the final corner though, and Elias maybe just misjudged it a little bit, so going to get out of the way. Perhaps up to the line now with DRS open. Can he improve? Yes, he can, but he can't improve enough to gain any places, and with 3.5 minutes left to go in the session, that could be his grid position set. So we are now in the final moments of peace in this session. We have, I believe, Trimashev is going to, I can select him properly, there we go. Trimashev is going to be the next driver to start a lap, so we'll see what he's able to do. I think Lelin may also be on a lap already. Let's see. Doesn't exactly look like it. If he was on a lap, he's certainly not anymore, so he's going to be going round again. But yeah, everybody's just building up now. We've just gone below 3 minutes left in the session, so final laps will be starting to come in the next minute or so's time, so we'll follow Trimashev as he makes his way through the first sector here, and seemed a little bit off the pace there, but he's very much up on his own pace as he heads through turn 6 here, and gets reasonable traction. Going to use a little bit of overtake to make up for the slight slip in there. As he goes now into turn 7, showing signs of a little bit of understeer there, but keeps everything well within the white lines, so should be on course for a valid lap at least. And if he can just maintain the advantage that he had in the first sector, then that would mark a strong improvement from the Bulgarian, but obviously can see, the gap between him and Nade in 11th is quite a massive one, but he might just be able to overcome it. Almost 6/10 up. If he can find a little bit more time in this final sector, then he might be able to try and get himself, provisionally at least, a little bit further up the order. If he makes his way through 15 now, you heard he lifted out of the throttle just a little bit, so around the final corner he's going to go. In the second of the Saubers, the only full-time Sauber driver here today, so up to the line, what can Trimashave do? It's a big improvement, but it's not quite enough to get ahead of Nade in P11, so that could be, could be Trimmer consigned to 12th place at best here. Meanwhile, you can see Kijel coming back into the pits here with only 2 minutes left to go. I don't think, there was a minute and 20 seconds left to go. He's definitely not going to set a lap. So Kijel going to be starting from down at the back of the order. Elias now confirms he's not going to do another lap as we would expect. So yeah, it's people on their final laps now. Let's see where Tamer is on the track. He's about to start his final lap of the session. Here we go. And he was invalidated for a second. I'm not sure if that was just from the outlap or what, but yeah, we'll see. As he heads into turn 1 now, what can the Red Bull driver do? He's got one chance to try and beat Elias here at a track where he has beaten him before, but let's see if he's able to do it again here tonight. As he heads through the first sector now, seemed very much under control through the first few corners. Again, going to take plenty of curb through 4 and a little bit less through 5, but that's not the end of the world for him, and he is just up on his time. Allegedly purple in the first sector, not sure how much to trust that as he runs it right up to the white line on the exit of 6, but yeah, he's going to need a bit more of an improvement than that. The gap is obviously 0.5 of a second, so at this rate it might just be more of a game of trying to secure that P2 for Tamer than it would be of trying to go for pole. So we'll see what the middle sector's like. It's not looked the best for him, I've got to say. It seemed a little bit scrappy, so up to the time in beam now, he's still just about on course to improve on his time, so it needs a big final sector here, but I don't think there's any chance of him beating that Ferrari here tonight, so or in qualifying at least, so let's see. Through 15. Seemed like he might have even lifted off a little bit that time. Again, not choosing to downshift. Into turn 16 now, the final corner. Is he going to keep it on the track? Yes, he is. So up to the line. Let's see what Tamer can do. Needs a big improvement here, and he is able to find, well, about half a tenth of improvement, but that is not going to be nearly enough to take pole. So Elias seems safe, and Tamer seems safe in second as well, because Binmeister, he's invalidated his lap. Trains and Blazer have both retired already. They won't be able to improve, which means Blundy probably going to be the only one who's left with a chance of getting himself somehow onto the front row, but it would take a mammoth improvement from him, so we'll follow on board with the Williams driver as he goes through the second sector, locking the inside front a little bit there, which is obviously not going to be ideal for his rotation. Heading through 11 now, up to the time in beam. Let's see, he is just about down on his time, so yeah, doesn't seem like, failing a very strong last sector, he's going to be going any further up the grid. Only needs a tenth to get past Blazer though, so we'll see what he can do, but certainly not going to be trouble in the front row, and I think we're starting to, well, we're very much starting to see the final picture of qualifying here. I think Elias is going to be pretty safely on course for his 6th pole of the season. Blundy up to the line he goes, and he's not able to improve. It was pretty much matched his time from the first lap, but he's not going to be able to improve, so that is all but confirmed now. Elias is going to take a 6th pole position in a row. That is, yeah, 100% record this season in qualifying, and he has been, yeah, on top of his game once again here today, so full credit goes to him. Trimashave now retires from the session, and that leaves just Ugly Panda to make his way up to the line. He's on a 143 at the moment, so he's certainly not going to improve, and that will wrap up qualifying here in Qatar. So there we are then. Final look at the grid order for today's race. That's going to be Elias on pole position from Tamer in second place. I reckon in the race though, these guys in second and third will have much more of a chance to try and stick with Elias. Like I say, the DRS is very powerful around here, so it is far from over just yet. Trains is going to be in fourth from Blazer in fifth. Blundy will start sixth, with Unitas 7th, Mr. Bus, the best of the Astons, in P8, Nade P9, perhaps rounds out the top 10, and then it's Phil, Ugly Panda, Trimashave, Lilin, and a couple more drivers, Tim and, I believe, Kijel, Slinks, and Q-Man will round off the grid. So we'll take a quick little break here, and then we'll be back with the race. Well, I'll leave it on the screen, but I'll take a quick little break for 30 seconds to get myself prepared, and then we'll see what the driver strategies are going to be like and see what kind of race we're about to see. So we can come back with a couple minutes left to spare and enjoy the final few moments of peace here, with Lrc obviously going to be on pole once again, but let's take a look and get our first impressions of what strategies the drivers are leading for. Not seeing any soft tyres unless, well, let's wait and see once we get to the grid. Tim could always surprise us. I mean, I wouldn't put it past him to put the inters on, to be honest, but we'll wait and see what he's going to be cooking up for us today. But it seems like very much going to be a case of mediums and hards for everybody here. And I would have to imagine from that the softs aren't really going to feature in this race at all, failing a safety car. So we'll see how it pans out. But yeah, that doesn't surprise me too much. Obviously, last season in Qatar, in the Tier 1 race, we ended up seeing a puncture for one of the soft tyre runners, which was in the form of the now effectively disgraced Hashim, who was once a Ferrari driver. And yeah, ended up getting a puncture in quite a topsy-turvy race for him. So I suppose does make sense to see everyone going for the harder compounds here, and we can now get ourselves ready for the formation lap and yeah, just confirm everybody's different strategies as they pull away from the grid now. So let's pull up that tyre change graphic, and indeed, nobody, including Tim, has gone for the soft tyres, so it's going to be a split of the two. It seems medium is going to be the preference, but our pole sitter is going to be starting, as he so often does, on the harder compound of tyre. And he's going to be followed by Tama in second, as Lrc gets a nice little slide on there, who is going to be on the medium tyre. So that's going to be very interesting to watch. Heading down to the first corner, the Red Bull going to have a lot more purchase than the Ferrari on the initial launch. So we'll see what Lrc can do. He's obviously been challenged quite a few times in the opening laps this season, so we'll see how things pan out. But obviously, if he is challenged in the opening laps here, then that could make it quite difficult for him to break any kind of gap in the first stint. So we'll see how it goes. In third place, Binmeister is going to match the pole sitter strategy, also on hard tyres. And behind him, Trains, Blazer, Blundy, all going to be on mediums. So again, more opportunities for some shifting and switching up to happen on the start of the race. Then Unitas and Mr. Bus, the last people for quite a while on the hard tyres. So we'll see how they fare. They should be better later on in the race. Then Nade, perhaps, Phil, Ugly Panda, Trimmer Shave, Lele, all going to be on medium tyres from 9th down to 14th. So from McLaren to McLaren, everyone is going to be on mediums. And then Kijel, after not setting a time in qualifying, he's going to look for some kind of recovery drive here today. And with that in mind, he's opted for the hard tyres. Keyman and Slinks, two drivers who obviously had qualifying bans, were... well, they will also be looking for recovery drives. They're much better than 16th and 18th in the order, so we'll see what they're able to do, see if they can carve their way through the field. Both of them have chosen mediums for their journey, and Timblish in P17 between the two is going to be starting on hards. So let's see how this goes. The front runners are making their way up to the grid now, as a couple of drivers did get disqualified, unfortunately, but most of us were able to make it all the way around the lap, so hopefully everybody's tyre temps are good. And yeah, Lrc is going to form onto the grid, Tama will be alongside him, and it doesn't seem like anyone's angling their cars too much on the front rows, so hopefully that should mean it's going to be a clean start, but you can never be too sure. Even with the barriers being about 1,000 miles away around here, I'm sure Lrc will find a way. So, here we go. We can switch to our front runner of Lrc, we'll ride on board with him here, and we'll count those lights in, because we go to 3, 4, and 5 red lights. And we are go for round 6 of LRC, and it seems like a decent start for Lrc, but it's going to be a much better one for Tamer on those medium tyres. Trains is going to get a good start in the background, but into turn 1, the Red Bull is going to go for the lead, and he might just get the lead. He's going to run Lrc right off the track there, and that is Tamer into the lead of the race. Trains up into third behind him, gets the better of Shadow on the race start there. Shadow obviously on the hard. He's going to be under pressure from Blazer now, heading down towards turn 4, as there was a bit of a kerfuffle further down the order in the middle of the pack, but it seems to have been a fairly clean start so far as we make our way through the first sector. This is where things can start to get a little bit tricky here as we head down into the hairpin. Lock in the rear axle was Unitas there, and he's got the Ferrari perhaps up his inside. Everybody seemed to be up his inside for a second. Kieshel's going to drop right down to the back of the order, but up at the front of the field, everything stays clean. Everybody stays facing the right way at the very least. As you can see, off the track was one of the, that was Unitas once again in the Alpine. So he's gone backwards very quickly on the start here, from starting, I believe, P8 down to P14 now. But up at the front of the field, Tamer gets the dream start, needed to put in a little bit of work at the first corner to stay ahead of Lrc, but stay ahead he has done, and he now leads the race and is going to be able to dictate the pace. But obviously, not this lap, but next lap, DRS is going to come into play, and that is going to mean that the front three, and, well, front pretty much everybody, is going to be stuck in a DRS train, so we'll see. We'll have one more lap of the circuit for everyone to try and build a gap, but straight after that, it's going to be overtakes galore, and we're going to be getting those overtakes started already. Q-Man is going to get past Ugly Panda and further up the order. Blundy's going to try and move to the inside of Shadow. You can see the hard tyres on that Mercedes still not seeming to switch on quite as well as the mediums have for everybody else, so he's able to fend off from the Williams for the time being. But yeah, we'll see. Shadow's just sort of got to cope in this first stint here and see how many places he can hold onto. So that might just give the top 4, actually, a bit of a chance here, because you can see Blazer's starting to build a bit of a gap to the Mercedes as off the track goes Nade for a second, which is obviously going to be something we've got to keep on top of here. Track limits penalties will be coming in thick and fast by the end of the race, you'd have to imagine, so we'll see how it pans out. But look at that, the gap from the Mercedes to the Haas, that's Binmeister to Shadow, Binmeister to Blazer, sorry, that gap is starting to open up already, and if that becomes, well, it already is, more than a second, then that could create very much the same effect that we saw in Austria, where it was basically 2 different fields that were fighting for 2 different races. Meanwhile, Tim, down at the back of the order, he's gone spinning off for presumably the first of a few occasions this race, so I'll leave him to his devices there, but yeah. Until we get a safety car, I'll leave him be. But up at the front of the field, Tamer has done, well, about as well as he possibly can here. He has very nearly broken DRS. The gap is going to go over a second momentarily, but that's after the detection point, so Lrc is just about going to be able to reel himself back into the range of the Red Bull, but having a look at the straight line speed doesn't seem to be the best. Meanwhile, Blundy, he's going to have a clean overtake, but now Mr. Bust is going to come out of nowhere up the inside. Blundy has to back out because Shadow was still on his outside. He's still going to be on the inside of Mr. Bust, heading into turn 2. Here comes that wheel-to-wheel racing I was talking about a few moments ago. They're still going to be all side by side. There's a bit of contact as they come through turn 3 into turn 4 now. Mr. Bust is going to have the inside, but Shadow is already ahead of him, and that is some very good defending from the Mercedes. I have no clue how he was able to stay ahead there, but Mr. Bust, obviously, another of the hard tyre runners. Meanwhile, there's contact further behind at the hairpin. That's probably, I mean, it is the heaviest braking zone on the track, and that's causing some chaos already. Trimmershave is now going to get up the inside of Ugly Panda, who seemed to make up a bunch of places out of nowhere, so I don't know if he was perhaps going too late on the brakes, and that might have triggered that whole shenanigans that just kicked off there. But everybody, once again, still seems to be facing in the right direction at least, so it's not been any catastrophes just yet, but that is certainly not ideal for those guys further down the order. The last thing you want to be doing in this race is losing time to the cars ahead and losing DRS, which is exactly what Trimmershave, who's actually had a very good start to his race, has now done to Phil Malone up ahead of him. But meanwhile, further up the order, well, there's some side-by-side action going on into the final turn of all things, as Keyman and Slinks, the 2 drivers with penalties in qualifying who weren't able to set a lap, are fighting. But meanwhile, there's a fight more important up at the front of the field, because Lrc, he's closed up the gap and he's going for the lead on Tamer, and he is going to get that lead going through turn 2. The Red Bull cannot fight it. He's going to have a look. There's changing places all the way through the field. Is Tamer going to be able to try anything into turn 4? No, the Ferrari is back into the lead of the race, and Binmeister still is somehow going to be in P5 after all of this. I think the hards might just be starting to switch on now, as you can see perhaps and Lelin were also switching places further down the order. This is the DRS train racing that we can get used to, as a massive dive from Lelin there, trying to reclaim the position. He's, well, I thought he got a penalty. That was just Tim getting his own penalty, but, yeah, he was very much, seemed to be off the track there. It was a bit of a kamikaze move. Meanwhile, behind him, Q-Man going to get a big slide on the exit of turn 7 there, and now he's going to have Unitas around his outside. Kieshel's going to try and look to get involved, as everybody seems to be checked up in this train, which is, well, I believe it starts with Trimashave. Indeed it does. The Sauber driver in P10 is basically just backing up the field here. Nade was able to get past him on the start-finish straight, I believe, so we'll see how that battle progresses, but up at the front of the field, meanwhile, it's, yeah, this is what it's going to be. You can get used to this. For the entire first stint, at the very least, we are going to be seeing a lot of position changes, and another one is going to be coming in here for the lead of the race. Tama switches to the inside, and Elias, I don't think, is going to fight it too hard in this early stage, although he does tap the back of the Red Bull there, I think from Tama just miscalculating his line a little bit. Meanwhile, further down the order, Ugly Panda's going to make a move on Trimashave and try to dispatch of the seemingly quite slow Sauber driver, and is going to be the next one to get clear of the train as things stand. But yeah, up at the front of the field, Elias has very much stayed with Tama so far, but he's not going to be close enough to try any kind of move into the hairpin. So yeah, I think from previous races that I've seen, with these two drivers at this track, I would have to imagine what we can expect at the front of the field at the very least is they're just going to continue to change places lap by lap, swap places in the DRS train, and just try to limit the chaos of anything that could happen behind them with Trains and Blazer getting involved. But obviously, a bit further down the order, there's no such thing as limiting chaos in this battle. You can see everybody's just everywhere on the track and fighting for, well, every man for themselves, so we'll see how things continue to develop here. Slink's now in the tow. He's currently the closest driver to the car ahead of them in this pack, but I mean, everybody's so close to each other that you could throw a blanket over all of them. So making their way through the final sector now is this train of cars, and yeah, like I suggested, it's very much that grouping format. The DRS train is coming into effect in full force, as you can see. But up at the front of the field, here we go once again. Elias going to do exactly what Tama did to him last lap. He gets ahead even before the braking zone. Meanwhile, further behind, that was one of the Astons. That was Mr. Bust getting all out of shape. He's going to check up his teammate through the first corner there, as everybody seems to be, well, forgetting how to drive for a moment. I think Blundy must have put a huge block on the Aston, and that has just caused a few moments of chaos and heart attack behind him. But everybody's managed to keep themselves in the race, so well done to everyone involved there. But yeah, further down, we've got, I think Lelin might have made a mistake, so got himself back going again at the very least, so he's going to continue on. But yeah, as I was trying to say before we got to the start-finish tree, and I'm going to get cut off again here, because now we've got Q-Man up the inside of perhaps as they exit turn 6 now, and that's going to become the outside into turn 7, which means he's not really going to have a chance at making that move. But yeah, let me try it one more time. We'll just ride on board for the Haas momentarily. But well, let's see, is he going to go for it to the inside? No, he's going to stick him behind for now. So as I was trying to say, if you take a look at the minimap, obviously ignoring the outliers of Lelin and Tim, you can see we very much have 3 distinct DRS groups starting to form here, with yeah, the top 4, then the, what is it, top 4, then 5th down to 9th, and then Trimashave downwards, all in separate groups, and all of those guys, if last week is anything to go by, are going to be kind of stuck there for the remainder of the race. So we'll see what happens, but what's going to happen next is, back up at the front of the field, as usual, Tama is going to repass Elias for the lead, and Trains did actually get very close to having a look at the Ferrari there, and Elias is still going to have a look at the back of the Red Bull. He's not done just yet, heading through the first couple of corners. We'll have to keep our eyes on this for the time being. Meanwhile, I can tell you, Mr. Bust has also gotten past Blundy for P6, so right at the rungs of last lap, and Elias not quite close enough to make a move, but Trains, you can see, he's all over the back of him. So what these guys don't want to do is allow a third car into the battle, because that is when things can start to get a little bit messy. So we'll keep our eyes on that. We'll keep our eyes everywhere, because there's so many battles going on. Like I said, Mr. Bus was able to make amends for the previous time around and get himself ahead of the Williams driver, but yeah, in behind him is now going to be Phil, and Nade has successfully caught up to the back of this pack, so showing that you can go from one train to another if you've got enough outright pace. So we'll keep an eye on that McLaren driver. It seems to be running fairly well so far, but yeah, like I say, the phenomenon we saw last week was basically whatever train you get stuck in is roughly where you're going to end up finishing the race. So we'll see. I think the best driver who stands a chance at beating that rule is going to be Shadow, because obviously he's on the hard tyres right now. He's going to have much better tyres than the front runners come the end of the race, aside from Elias. Speaking of which front runners, here we go once again. Elias is going to go to the inside of the Red Bull and take the lead back once more, and Trains is going to sit patiently in behind them. He's just waiting for a clear-cut chance for him to try and make the move. Meanwhile, Blundy's going to repass for P6, and further down the order, perhaps is going to be, well, they seem like they were 3 wide. It's everybody wide into the first corner. There's a bit of contact between the Haas and the Sauber there, as Q-Man's going to make a whole host of places round the outside of Trimoshave at turn 2, and perhaps actually hits the back of the Sauber driver by the looks of things. It's all kicking off here, but yeah, I couldn't even switch to it for a second. The cameras just decided that they didn't want to show me it whatsoever. Meanwhile, now something's gone on. I think Mr. Bus might have spun in P9, or no, he's not even spun, he's just been overtaken somewhere in the middle sector by both his teammate and Nade, so there must have been a mistake from the Aston. Further down the order once again though, the 2 Alpines have swapped places, and that's because Slinks has made a mistake coming out of turn 6, or maybe going into turn 6, I don't really know at this point, there's so much going on, but he's going to drop now down to P16, and he's just, well, unlike what Q-Man's able to do, he's not really been able to recover so far in this race, so we'll see what the Alpine can do. He's got some great pace, we know that from other races, but yeah, doesn't seem to be going his way so far, so we'll see how everything continues to pan out. Meanwhile, Nade is going to pick up the first penalty of the race, or first competitive penalty, no offense to him, in P8, and he's, well, he's still showing some great pace, but that is going to be first of many, and everyone's going to have to try their very best to keep on top of that. Meanwhile, for the first time, Tamer not quite close enough. You saw him having a look and having to try and force the move on Elias. The DRS wasn't enough to get him past this time, so I think that's going to be our first sign that the tides of the tyres are starting to change, and the hards are very much starting to come into their own now as the better compound of tyre, as we're already 9 laps into this race. And obviously with all of the action going on, the non-stop action, and I'll have to take a couple of breaks myself, but yeah, we're going strong so far, and we'll soldier on because there is plenty of entertaining action going on. What I'm spotting up at the front of the field, well, I'll come back to that in a second, because I'm spotting something else further down the order. Ugly Panda gets past Unitas, seemingly to the dismay of the Alpine, who's going to get a massive snap of oversteer and now lose another place to Kijel there. And, well, yeah, I'm not sure exactly what happened, but Unitas going backwards now. Alpine just not having a good race whatsoever, so again, well, Unitas at least is on the hard, so he has a chance to recover in the second stint, but yeah, those guys, for as strong as a team and a pairing as they are, things just not going their way so far today. But what I was going to say is now, look at this. I Like Trains is closer to Tamer than Tamer is to Elias, and Trains, after being so patient so far, is now going to have his patience rewarded as he goes up the inside into turn 1 and makes the move to get into second place. So the Sauber reserve, and of course he is only a reserve, is showing some great pace in this race. Meanwhile, Nade also showing great pace. He's not only past Phil, but he's also past Blundy to get up into P6. So trying to do as much as he can to counteract the penalty, and he's doing a good job of that so far, showing some fantastic pace. But yeah, we'll see what he's able to do. I would have to expect, like I say, a lot of other drivers will pick up penalties, so it's just going to be a case of him trying to manage that and try not to pick up any more from here until the end of the race. So we'll see how he gets on, but as usual, there is still plenty of action going on in the race, and yeah, it is very interesting that Trains is past Tamer. Well, hang on, I'm immediately going to be interrupted again. As soon as I try to say something about the front of the field, there seems to be something else going on down the field, and it's Slinks making the exact same mistake as he made a few laps ago, only worse this time. Planted himself in the gravel, and a bad day gets even worse for him in the Alpine, and he is now down behind Lellen and into P17. But yeah, as I was trying to say, oh, I'm going to get cut off again, aren't I? Ugly Panda's now back past Unitas. I have no idea how these guys even managed to switch places so many times in the middle sector. This seems to be how, driving into the back of each other. I've seen that end badly a few times here before, so hopefully that doesn't transpire the way that it has done in previous seasons. But looking back up the order, here's going to be a lot of moves by the looks of things. Phil's going to try to make 3 of them and try to get all the way up into 6, as Nade's going to go late on the brakes to try and defend from Mr. Bust, who's also making moves. Blundy's lost about 3 or 4 places in all of this, as everybody's come flying past. There's a yellow flag at the first corner. I think that's just for Tim Blythe staying out of people's way. They're still side by side, and Nade and Mr. Bust heading into turn 5. McLaren on the inside, Aston on the outside. They get so close to contact, but the Aston of Mr. Bust is just about going to make it through, and Blundy's going to seize the opportunity to get up the inside now, going into turn 6, but he's not going to have the traction on the exit, and so he's going to have to stay in P9. But that is how quickly things can change around this track with the strength of the DRS, and all of a sudden, it's Phil Malone now up into P6, even on the quickly wearing medium tyres. But yeah, as I was a long time ago now trying to say, it's very interesting that Lrc Trains has now gotten back past Tamer. Like we say, he's not been quite at his peak of performance yet. He's still seemingly building back up to the league race, and the whole league racing thing is in the background. Blazer is going to come for the first of the pit stop, so a little bit early for the Haas driver. He's going to go for the undercut. We'll see how that works out for him, but because of the DRS train, it might not work out very well at all. Meanwhile, Tamer is looking to reclaim his position into turn 1, goes a bit deep though, and so now Trains is going to switch him back into turn 2. They're still going to be side by side, and there's going to be contact between the two of them. Yeah, there's no damage for the Sauber driver, which is, he is very lucky to not have damage. Could have very easily been the M plate chopped off, but yeah, I think Tamer just showing signs of a little bit of displeasure at the fact that Elias is now 2.5 seconds clear, and that is obviously on the hard tyres. He's going to have the mediums at the end, so things are looking, failing a safety car, very good for the Ferrari driver as it stands, and as has so often been the case so far this season. Meanwhile, further down the order, the battle for P5 as it is now with the pit stop for Blazer, Mr. Bust has gotten back ahead of his teammate up into P5. Meanwhile, Nade stays ahead of Blundy for 7th and 8th. Human up into P9. Again, that is just because Blazer's made a pit stop, and I believe who else came into the pits? It was Ugly Panda. There was the second driver, and it was the second Williams, who is also switching onto the hards at the same time as Blazer. So we'll see how the undercut works out for these guys, but like I say, because of the strength of the DRS, if you are in DRS, it's probably best to just stay in that until the cars ahead of you come into the pits. Speaking of which, here we go, perfect example of what I mean, as Trains will instantly follow Tamer into the pit lane, and the two of them are going to go to dispatch of those medium tyres now, allowing Binmeister, who is also on the hards, to get up into second place. And did Phil come into the pits as well? No, he stayed out, so he's going to go a further lap longer. Is he going to be able to get past his teammate into turn 1? Not quite, so he's just going to hold position now, make use of the DRS like I said, but let's see what the race off of pit lane is looking like. Seems like the Red Bull boys have done their job, and they are going to get out once again back ahead of Lrc Trains, so it's going to be resuming as a very close battle between those guys, and Tamer actually almost throws it away in the first corner. Could be some moves here coming in on the cold tyres if there's any mistakes, so we'll see what Trains can do. You can see the Red Bull sliding his way around the corners. Trains might fancy it into turn 4, but he's not going to be close enough without some battery, so he's just going to play it sensible for the time being. He knows he'll get another chance, but yeah, this is where things will start to get interesting again now, because obviously things started to spread out towards the end of the stint, as you'd expect, but that does mean that towards the end of the second stint, things will all start to converge as the tyre difference shakes itself out. Obviously, all of that can be thrown out the window at any moment if someone, I don't know, decides to bring out a safety car, so we'll see how it pans out for everybody here, but Elias is going to continue on for presumably another few laps, as will Binmeister and as will Mr. Bust, but I would guess Phil behind him is probably going to be into the pits this time by, unless he really fancies the overcut. Let's see. We'll ride on board with the Aston, and no, he's going to bail for the pit lane now. Get rid of those tyres, careful not to speed into the pits. I will just check the penalties very quickly, just in case anyone did so, and it seems like Slinks very much did speed into the pits, so yeah, his day continues to get even worse, unfortunately for him. And yeah, he's not going to be faring particularly well in this race at all. As you can see now, plenty more drivers in. Game's not even telling us who's in the pits at this point. Let's switch off the tyre graphics since, well, actually we'll keep it on for a few moments whilst everybody's making the pit stop. So now we have the first time in the race where everyone's on hards, That will obviously soon change once the hard runners do ditch and dispatch of their tyres. It's into turn 1. It's going to be very close between Phil and Blundy here. Going to resume the battle straight away, and it seems like the overcut hasn't quite worked out for Phil. He's going to be on cold tyres, so he needs to try and heat them up as quickly as possible so as not to lose time over the course of the lap. But Blundy gets through and up ahead of Phil, provisionally at least, and both of them still quite a ways behind Blazer, so he's certainly not going to have lost too much time from his undercut, and in fact, he seems to have gained a bit of time and has closed right up to the back of Trains and Tama. So yeah, seemingly some good strategy calls from him down at Haas. Meanwhile, further up the order, back at the front, Elias still running as usual. I will keep you posted on when those guys do come into the pits, but we're finally reaching one of the calmer stages of this race. It's taken its sweet time, but we're there now. And so, yeah, we can all enjoy it whilst it lasts. Like I say, things will converge the longer the stint goes on, and if we do get a safety car, then things will be forced to converge anyway, so let's see what happens. But the next thing that's going to happen seems like it's going to be Trains having a look to the inside in turn 1, but he's not quite close enough to get past Tama this time. Either that, or he just doesn't really fancy a scrap and doesn't want to lose any time, so we'll see. Given how he's played the race so far, that wouldn't surprise me too much. Meanwhile, behind him, oh, there goes Q-Man up the inside, about to make a double overtake. We've seen how his and Phil's races have gone before, and he's still going to be side by side with the Aston driver. Right round the outside he's going to go. Blundy's going to have front row seats to all of this, which obviously didn't go too well for Blundy the last time. Hassan and Aston were side by side. Into turn 4 they go, and they do keep it clean, thankfully, and that's Q-Man with some very nice moves, albeit some very audacious moves, up into P9 and continuing his recovery drive in some style. So yeah, he's successfully done, like I say, what it's very hard to do, and jumped from the 3rd train up to the 2nd train, although the trains obviously aren't really very potent at the moment because of all the pit stops, but yeah, he's cleared a big gap there, Q-Man, and that is very impressive stuff for him to now be genuinely ahead of Phil and ahead of Blundy on the track. That could be, well, that would give him a chance, I believe, at a top 5 finish come the end of the race, which, given the qualifying ban, would be seriously impressive from the Haas driver. So we'll see how it goes, but obviously, if anyone's not going to take that lion down, it's going to be this man right here. So we'll see how those guys go. Meanwhile, Blundy's going to pick up his first penalty. 3 seconds for him for track limits. Like I say, they will just continue to roll in as the session progresses, and yeah, the overtakes will likewise do the same thing. Train's not close enough to pass Tama once again, but Phil is very much close enough to pass the Haas, and Blundy's going to try and follow him through, going to go right up to the inside, and basically do what Q-Man did to him this time last lap, going to close the door on the exit of turn 1, and that is Blundy in the Williams through back into P10, as it is provisionally, and getting a little tap on the rear from the Haas driver on his way through as a thank you. And Nade, he's now made, well, he had already made his pit stop, but he's, yeah, I think he came out quite a ways behind those guys, so he's now been able to close that gap. So, again, showing the pace that he's got, so there's a little bit of a mistake from Blundy in the Williams there. That's going to give Q-Man a chance, well, half a chance to look up the inside, but again, not going to be able to find a way through on the outside of turn 7, so gonna have to sit back in behind. But yeah, Nade, he's done a good job to get back into P7 and get back into P12 and get back into that fight. Meanwhile, up at the front of the field, here comes Elias for his pit stop. Binmeister's gonna join him, obviously. Both of them just gonna play it safe, play it simple, and go onto medium tyres to the end of the race. And yeah, Mr. Bust is also gonna be in, so I think seems like most of the hard tyre runners are going to come in this time by, so I don't think we're going to expect too many major changes, but let's have a look where Elias is going to field out. He's going to be still clear of Tama in 2nd place, and still by around about 1.5 seconds, obviously on the cold tyres. He's going to lose a little bit more time as he tries to get them up to temperature, but he is going to be seemingly retaining his lead of the race. Meanwhile, further down the order, here we go again, 3 wide into turn 1. Blundy really gets the elbows out on Phil there, and that's going to give Q-Man the chance to pass them both. Back up the inside goes Phil on the switchback. He won't be best pleased with that at all. Trying to have a look around the outside of the Williams now as they head through turns 2 and 3, but he's not able to find any way through, so a little bit of contact and things starting to get feisty here. Now you can see Mr. Bust on the medium tyres after making his pit stop. He's rejoined behind all of these guys, but he's going to be on the faster compound, so watch out for him as this stint progresses, if he does get to the front of the train, he might just have a chance to break away. But yeah, drama starting to play out here once again between the two Germans and the Haas of Q-Man. So yeah, we've seen this happen a few times this season, and we'll have to keep our eyes on that as the race goes on. But meanwhile, you can see there was another yellow flag for Tim, as there has been plenty of times already. But yeah, the blue car that's currently leading the race, don't worry, that's not Tama, we didn't miss anything, that is Kijel, who is still staying out on his hard tyres, going as long as possible, and probably just trying to get a safety car. What he is going to do is give DRS to Elias. Meanwhile behind, Tama could probably have used some of that, because I Like Trains is now plenty close enough to breeze past him down the start-finish straight. There's nothing the Red Bull driver can do to combat that going into turn 1, and that is Trains now back up into provisional P2, and it seems like that is going to be what the fight is for the remainder of this race. Again, failing a safety car, but here we go. Here comes the train of action down towards turn 1. Blundy not quite close enough to make a move, but Mr. Bust is going to make 2 of them into turn 1. We've seen it so many times already. Drivers on the inside line seem to have so much grip and so much confidence on the brakes, and Mr. Bust, using the extra grip that we know he has on the mediums, makes a very nice double move there to get past Nade and past his teammate up into P10, and with that kind of progress, he might just be shaping up a move somewhere in the middle sector on the Williams here. Is he going to have a look to the outside? You bet he is going into turn 6, because he's going to have the traction when they come to the exit of the corner. He's going to have the inside coming to turn 7. They bang tyres to side pod going into turn 7. It's, well, Blundy's going to hang it round the outside, and surely he can't do that. No, he can't, and that's Mr. Bus now up into P9, showing great pace on those mediums, and yeah, showing some great racing prowess as well. Some very tidy moves by him, and Mr. Bust will immediately set his sights on Darth Q-Man in the Haas ahead of him. Some great racing there. Meanwhile, back into the start-finish straight, you can see this time it's going to be Trains passing Kijel, who's still staying out on those hards. Like I say, I think he is just waiting to see if he can find a safety car anywhere. Unitus was going to do the same, but he's bailed back into the pits now, so you can see him getting passed by a few guys, and there's been a mistake for Kijel, actually, going through turn 2. I don't know if it was a full spin or what, but he's going to drop down the order a few places, and I'm sure the front 4 drivers, or the second, third and fourth drivers of Trains, Tama and Blazer will all greatly appreciate him now getting out of their way, albeit not through his intention. Meanwhile, further behind them, Mr. Bust was indeed able to make the move. Unfortunately, we didn't catch it on Q-Man, but that is exactly what we'd expect, using the extra grip, using the DRS, and getting himself through into P7. So the question now is going to be, can he open up a gap? You can see the gap is already starting to open up, and they've only just gotten, like, well, a few corners through the middle sector of the lap, so I think he's going to have the chance, very much so, to break DRS, and if he can do that, then he's going to be effectively, failing penalties, locked into a very good finishing position at the end of the race. So we'll see how it goes. It's going to be Kijel is, I believe, the only driver now in the top 10 who's yet to make his pit stop. Indeed he is. So once he comes into the pits, the order is going to be resumed, and he comes in right now, right on cue. So Binmeister will reacquire his P5. He's got a penalty as well, so we'll have to keep our eyes on that. 4.5 seconds is his gap to Blazer. He's on the mediums, like we say. Meanwhile, hang on, Trains and Tama are going to be swapping places after turn 1 here. That caught me a bit by surprise. They're going to be very close together as they go round turns 2 and 3. We've seen locking tyres go badly for Trains in the last race, but he's just about going to avoid it this time, and he gets back ahead of Tama. This fight for P2 is very much where the action's going to be at as far as the podium fight goes, and further down the order, Mr. Bust was indeed, I believe at least, able to break DRS. Oh no, he wasn't. I think Q-Man was able to stick with him, but behind him, Phil and Blundy are going to be side by side again going into turn 4. Might Nade fancy a chance to lock up the inside at 5? Yes, he is. He's going to be still side by side. The Williams is still on his inside. You can see him right there, and it's going to be a traction race off of turn 6. Some brilliant wheel-to-wheel action here. Up towards turn 7, he's going to have the inside as the McLaren. Blundy's going to be forced a long way round again, but this time, with the same compound of tyres, he's able to stay alongside. They're still wheel-to-wheel as they head down into turn 10, and surely the Williams is going to get the place, but no, Nade still there as they come off the corner through turn 11. They're banging tyres and side pods now, heading into turn 12. The gloves might start to come off if the side-by-side any longer, and Blundy decides to relinquish the position. He'll wait for the DRS on the start-finish straight, but what a fight that was. Meanwhile, we're immediately going to have to stay with the action because it's now going on up at the front of the field. Tama with DRS able to immediately get right back past Trains and back into P2. And yeah, like I say, that fight is going to continue long into the end of this race, I would have to imagine. Meanwhile, Q-Man is still able to stick with Mr. Bus, so the longer that the stint goes on those mediums, you would have to imagine the more the tyres are going to start to go off, and Mr. Bust may still have to do some late race defending from that Haas driver yet if he wants to hold on to that P6, so we'll keep our eyes on that. Meanwhile, further down the order, you can see Kijel trying to make a move on Trimashave and doing so successfully round the outside of turn 1. I believe Unitas also led the charge there to get past the Sauber driver. And yeah, nice moves all around here. We've seen some fantastic wheel-to-wheel racing here today, which is, yeah, very nice to see from all the drivers. And they've done a, I would have to say, pretty stellar job so far of keeping everything clean with how frenzied it has been at times. So good job to everyone so far, but there's still 8 laps left to go, so I don't want to jinx anything before we reach the checkered flag. And obviously, something else that this guy, right here, Tama, will not want to have fresh in his mind as we come towards the final few laps of this race is fuel mileage is obviously very, very strong around here, or sorry, very, very weak around here. You can't go very far on the fuel, so we'll have to see if that becomes a factor towards the end of this race. Meanwhile, what's going to be obviously the bigger factor for him at the moment is Trains trying to get up the inside with a switchback as they head in towards turn 2. Tama is going to defend the inside and is going to defend successfully. Trains might have a look if he can get to the inside at turn 4 here, but I don't think he's going to be able to do so. And again, it's just going to have to play things safe. Meanwhile, further down the order, here comes the fight that I was talking about could be happening. And yeah, Q-Man still making those hard tyres work. He's up the inside now, coming through turn 2. I don't even know how he's managed to do that. Mr. Bus using a bit of battery, I would assume, to try and stay ahead. And he's just about going to be able to do that, heading into turn 4. But yeah, getting very feisty between these guys already. So yeah, let's wait and see. There could still be some drama late on in the race here. But yeah, those hard tyres seem to be working perfectly fine on that Haas driver. He's got some great pace around this track, so the battle for 6th is very much still on as it stands, and the battle for 4th, if Blazer does get a penalty, could very much be on as well. Shadow has closed the gap by 2.5 seconds. Like I say, the tyres, as we've seen with Mr. Bust, will be going off the longer the stint goes on, but he's seemingly got some fantastic pace and might yet fancy a move before the end of this race. But first up, here we go again. Deja vu, with Trains getting onto the back of the Red Bull, and he's going to have the DRS open as he cruises up now, sitting in the tow. He'll pull to the inside. Tama puts on a little bit of a late block, but that's not going to deter Trains from taking the inside, taking the position, and yeah, getting himself back into P2. So it's just going to be a case of switching places just about every lap for those guys, but obviously, the further we get into the race, the more you're going to have to consider what lap to make the pass. Meanwhile, wow, this Q-Man wants to make the pass right away, getting very feisty between the other Aston of Mr. Bust and the Haas, and there's contact. I said there could be late drama, and both of them go spinning to the inside, and well, that's a great race ruined for both of those guys, and well, drama has boiled over instantly there. The second they were fighting, we saw them both getting feisty last lap, and now you can see the Ferrari, perhaps he's got, I think he must have got an illegal overtakes on both of those guys, so Codemaster's still hard at work to ruin the race as much as possible, but yeah, Mr. Bust and Q-Man making contact on the exit of turn 1, and well, the way that they were racing down the start-finish straight, you've got to say it was looking quite inevitable, so yeah, that's not going to be great, and I'm sure there's going to be some tempers flaring in the league chat and the cooldown room after this race, so yeah. It's happened again, unfortunately. Haas and Aston Martin continue their war in this season, and yeah, certainly no sign of any friendships being made here today. But meanwhile, further up the order, Binmeister has very much caught the back of the Haas of Blazer now, so we'll keep an eye on him. But first of all, we'll have to see Tama and Train swap places again, but here we go now. Binmeister gonna get up the inside and get ahead of Blazer now, heading into turn 1. So the task is very clear for that Mercedes driver. Break 3 seconds at all costs, because otherwise he's, well, never mind. He's going to have to do a hell of a lot more than break 3 seconds. He's got 13 seconds of penalties. I'm going to have to assume that he's sped in the pit lane then. And yeah, that's pretty much the only way he's going to get 10 seconds. So yeah, I think Binmeister has unfortunately, much like he has done in previous races, thrown away a chance at a better finish here. And much like it was, in fact, just this time last week in Austria, he seems like he's going to lose a strong position, 2 penalties, and going to be relegated to P5. So yeah, unfortunate for him, and luckily for him, though, Phil Malone, who's now in P6, has inherited that position from his teammate and the unfortunate Haas of Q-Man, who, believe it or not, those guys are still fighting further behind. I thought they might have calmed down, but obviously, why the hell would they do that? They're still going to be wheel-to-wheel as they go through the middle sector, but Mr. Buzz this time, able to get ahead cleanly of the Haas driver, and yeah, well, I mean, as I say cleanly, I will add that I'm not going to make any comment on who was at fault for the incident. I'll leave that completely up to the stewards to decide, but yeah, there's some very fierce racing between those guys and between Haas and Aston Martin, as we've seen plenty of times this season. Meanwhile, that is trains once again repassing Tama. So like I say, we've only got 4 laps left in the race, and around about now, you're going to start wanting to consider what lap you want to make the move on to actually have a chance at staying ahead. So we'll see how it goes. If Bintmeister thinks he can get the 10-second penalty removed, then he's doing a very good job at breaking the gap to Blazer. He really does have some great pace in this race, so it is a shame to see that he's dropped so far down because of those penalties. Meanwhile, it's 2x2 through the first corner here. Perhaps and Q-Man and Mr. Bust and is that Unitas and the Alpine all getting involved, getting very close to each other. Perhaps needs to leave a little bit of space because the Alpine's coming through on the outside. They're still going to be wheel to wheel now as they head into turn 4. It's going to be oh so close between them. Perhaps it's going to get squeezed wide. Up the inside is going to go the Aston Martin driver of Mr. Bust. He's going to tap the side of perhaps as the Ferrari moves over in the braking zone, and they're all going to get very close and very feisty as they head through the middle sector, but Mr. Bust makes the move with better traction than the Ferrari. Kiesel, I believe, that is now on the back of perhaps trying to get involved, and there's going to be contact between them. I have no idea how they didn't both go spinning off the track there. I think they were very lucky it was a right-hander and not a left, but yeah, they're still going to be wheel-to-wheel. That's not deterring Kiesel one bit as they head towards turn 12. Is perhaps going to back out? No, he's going to keep his footing on the inside, and he's going to pick up a penalty in the process because Kiesel decided that corner was entirely his, left no room for the Ferrari, and yeah, well, I had to go and say that the driving standards were great, didn't I? Because now they're immediately starting to fall apart a little bit towards the end. Binmeister has come in for a set of soft tyres. I mean, I guess he's just going for the fastest lap. I don't know why he would possibly do that, but he's going to throw away a great finish here. I have no idea why he's done that, but yeah, that's entirely bizarre. I don't know if he'd maybe been disconnected from the session or what. For some reason, he has come into the pits and put on a set of soft tyres and is now going to drop completely out of points contention. I know he had penalties, but he was still going to get a P5 finish. So now, that P5 has been gifted to Phil, who just seems to have, well, the field parting like the Red Sea ahead of him, and he's going to be up into 5th place now. Maybe somebody else is going to fall off the road before we get to the checkered flag here. I did say that fuel mileage is going to be something we will have to keep an eye on, but yeah, Binmeister, very bizarre, makes the pit stop for softs and is going to be not scoring any points in this race, you would have to imagine now, although he does make the pass on Trimmershave to get up into P14. Meanwhile, back up the order, here we go again, lap 27 now, and round the outside trains is going to have to go, and there's a big slide from the Red Bull of Tama there. He's really pulling out all the stops to stay ahead at this point, so I think that is your clue as to what these guys want to do. Tama seems to want the track position. Elias at this point is long gone at the front of the field, so if it was tyre wear for Shadow, which I can't imagine it would be, but if it was, then he might just have to keep an eye on that and try and manage it to the end. He's got a 10-second buffer in any case, so he should be fine. Meanwhile, you can see Q-Man making another move on Unitas now to get himself back up into P8, so he's going to still be able to take away some decent points from this race, but I don't think that's going to do anything to quell his potential frustrations once we get to the checkered flag. But now we're going to see another driver into the pits for softs. This time it's Ugly Panda, so I don't think he was going to score points anyway, so it may just be a case of him trying to take the fastest lap, but it's very bizarre to see 4 drivers all pitting for softs with only a few laps left to go here. But here we go again. There seems to be some more drama kicking off, and you bet there is. Now it's going to be Kiesel side by side with Q-Man. Q-Man's made a Kiesel's made a few moves, sorry, and he's going to make another one right round the outside of Q-Man there. Really had no regard whatsoever for the front wing of the Haas, so very lucky that he wasn't still alongside, and Kiesel, with what happened to be quite a nice move, although a very assertive move, gets himself for the moment, back up into P7, but or P8, sorry, but up the front of the field, Trains has gotten back past Tamer now onto the penultimate lap of the race, but that could be the wrong call for the Sauber driver because on the final lap, Tamer's going to have the DRS to try and go for the re-overtake. So this is going to be very interesting once we get to the finish. Further behind them though, Nade's trying to make a move. He's still got the penalty. Phil still doesn't have a penalty, but Nade is going to make the move on track. Meanwhile, further behind them, it's all kicking off towards the end of the race. Kijel's going to be side by side now with Unitas as they head into the first corner. Mr. Bus trying to see if he can pick up any scraps here as they head through 1 and 2, but seems like everybody's going to hold onto the positions as it looks like. Yep, Unitas is going to be right on the back of Kijel heading towards turn 4, but he's not going to be able to find any way through, so everyone's going to stay as they are for the time being. Let's turn off the tyre graphic because nobody needs to see that now. Everybody knows what's happening from here to the end, but up at the front of the field, Lrc is 1 corner away from starting his final lap of the race. In behind him, the podium, well, I was going to say it's yet to be decided, but there's a penalty, 3-second time penalty for I Like Trains. That might just decide it for us unless Tamer gets one on the final lap of the race, so maybe a little bit of an anticlimax in this battle, but we'll wait and see. Like I say, there can always be something that happens with fuel here at the end of the race, so it's not over until it's over, and that is why Tamer is going to line up the move here, heading towards turn 1. He wants to get it done on track in any case, but there's going to be contact between them. Washing out wide was the Sauber driver into the first corner, and Tamer just about gets it done on the road. It was almost catastrophe there, but I Like Trains. Lucky for him, Blazer's also got a penalty behind, so he's not going to be in any threat of losing that position. But big drama on the final lap, and here comes Phil to continue the drama. He's going to make the re-overtake on Nade. Nade can't do anything to fight it, and further down the order, Keyman can do nothing to stop 2 drivers, Unitas and Kijel, from passing him because he doesn't have the DRS and they do. So we'll see what happens on the run to the line yet as well. Maybe there might even be more moves, but it seems like this might be our look at what the final order is going to be. Tamer is going to still be defending from I Like Trains, who's going to have a look up the inside at turn 10, trying to use as much battery as possible. They both are. They want that place on the track. Obviously, Tamer still does not have a penalty, and he's probably not going to get one at this stage, but Trains wants to do it for pride, if nothing else. After what happened at turn 1, he's going to be so close following him through the middle sector. Meanwhile, up at the front of the field, Elias will take his 6th win of the season, his 5th win of the season, and behind, Trains is going to be right on the back of Tamer heading into the final turn, but it's not going to be enough for the Sauber driver, and with penalties anyway, Tamer will take 2nd place from Trains with a very valiant P3. Blazer will come home P4, he's pretty happy with that one, and it's going to be Phil, if he can just keep things clean on penalties and not make any mistakes in the final couple of corners here, he's going to take P5. Into the final turn they go now. Nade's going to keep him honest all the way to the checkered flag, but the Aston Martin is going to do exactly what he needs to do and take P5. Very good drive by him, and further behind, what else is going to happen? Blundy's able to get past Nade on penalties, and everybody's going to make their way up to the checkered flag here, and it's going to be all changed. Bit of musical chairs as they cross the line. So Nade ends up 7th, Qman gets himself back into 8th on pens, then Mr. Buster's going to be 9th, so those two actually end up side by side after all, and Kijel will end up as the last of the point scoring finishers before any stewards' decisions are applied. Perhaps it's going to be an 11th. I'll be a bit disappointed to miss out on points by only 2/10, and we will recount the rest of the grid in a second. It was Unitas in 12th, Trimashave was in 13th, and Binmeister, after that late pit stop, down in P14. So, very dramatic race all the way through, thoroughly entertaining, and that is, that is LRC doing what LRC does best, and this man doing exactly what he does best, taking the top step of the podium as ever, with another very strong drive here today. And though there may be some fireworks going off at the background in the circuit, I can also tell you that the fireworks are already underway as usual in the league chat as well, so I can, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see the tempers flaring after this race. So the interviews I'm sure will be very interesting, though I will not be there for them, so I'll be handing over in a few minutes' time to Phil, I believe, if everything works out correctly, and he's going to be taking you through the interviews and the clips after the race. But final rundown of the order, Elias takes another win and fastest lap by How the hell has he even managed that margin? 22.6. Yeah, very very good drive by him. Tamer's going to be in second place from Trains in third, Blazer P4 and Phil in P5, and it's going to be Haas Aston Martin and Haas Aston Martin, separated by Blundy and Nade, 6th and 7th. Keisha, like we say, rounds out the points. And perhaps Unitas, Binmeister, or Trimmershape Binmeister, slinks with a very disappointing drive from him today. Unfortunately, things just didn't go his way. Then Ugly Panda 16th on debut from Lele and Tim, rounding out the order. So there you go then. that is a vintage LRC race at Qatar. Very entertaining as ever. And I will switch to the intermission scene if I can, which is right here. There we go. And yeah, very good stuff. Thoroughly entertaining race, and some great driving on display, as well as, unfortunately, the usual couple of mistakes creeping in there as well. So, like we say, the stewards will be, I'm sure, hard at work after the race, and will make whatever necessary adjustments need to be made. But I think for the most part, we should be relatively clean after this one, because it did seem to be mostly just some hard but fair racing. So, yeah, very good stuff. And like I say, we will now go on to an intermission, and I will see if we can't hand over the stream to Phil, since I have places to be, unfortunately. And Phil will take you through the interviews after the race. So we'll be back in probably a few minutes' time. Once the stream has changed hands, it may mean restarting for a second, so just bear with us through that. And then we'll be back with driver interviews, clips, and all of the inside insight into the drama from this race. We'll be back in a